'Cause this is gonna get dark soon.
Good evening and welcome to another edition of Trending Mind, the Trending Mind. This is the Trending Mind 24, and we're talking today about guilty pleasures. So please share the broadcast, like, and we'll be back shortly. What is knowledge? And how much of it must we acquire in order to better our lives? What makes some forms of knowledge seemingly more advantageous than others? What fuels this desire to learn and to know and to understand? And how much of what we learn is actually applied to the bettering of our lives? Is it necessary to know in order to grow? Join us, a group of former Guyanese high schoolers and our special guests, as we chat about the things we need to know and about education and the process of learning in the tech age. This is the Trending Mind, Friday evenings at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time on Facebook and YouTube. All right, the subject for this evening is guilty pleasures. Michelle, I'm going to come to you first. And what we want to see if we can do in a maybe pseudoscience kind of way is analyze the whole process of a talk name, a sweet piece of gossip. All right, let us, in our own Trending Mind way, kind of break it down. So this is the scenario, Michelle. You're out someday, and you see Andy Gordon in the company of a young lady. The young lady is not his wife, and from all appearances, he's not discussing anything about the Trending Mind. So, something has got to be going on. Now, let's say you're going to take that piece of news of seeing Andy Gordon on the outside with a young lady that is evidently not his wife, and he's evidently not talking anything about the Trending Mind. All right? And you're going to go and speak to Antoine and Renita. Who do you tackle first? Why? And what do you tell each of them?
So, and this is purely hypothetical, right? So, Andy looked like he liked a sweet piece of gossip. So, I'm gonna start with Andy, right?
Anton.
Antoine. Yes, I'm gonna start with him.
Antoine.
So I'm gonna tell Antoine that I see Andy, and you gotta spice it up. If you see how we look at the girl in her eyes, you have to see this. Okay, you think we should tell Renita because Renita is the wife friend. What are we gonna do? Okay, so then we're gonna formulate a story and go to Renita with it now. Renita boy, when last you see Andy? Everything okay? How is your friend? You know how the story goes, right? Then by the time it gets to Compton, you probably was sleeping with the girl, right? It wasn't just that you were walking with her, right? You know that they've been together. If you see exactly where they were coming from. Boy, when they see me, he turned his face. He pretend not to see me, right? That's what it is. So now, if it's the real life, me, I couldn't care less. Unless Only one time that has bothered me. And I ain't gonna say it now.
Compton, what could make what do you think makes a story juicy, and what makes us anxious to want to tell it? So, you see Andy, this guy that who's strength in mind and thing, and he's with a young lady that is not his wife, and something stirs in you to go spread the news. What do you think it is that stirs within you? Compton frozen.
It looks so.
Oh no, I'm sorry. I didn't realize that you
Yeah. It was you. Right. Okay. No, I'm saying. What do you think stirs within us to decide? Okay, we're gonna spread this little bit of sweet news.
I think it is, for me, it comes over as I am the holder or the keeper of something that I can share. So for me, it's a power play. For me, it's a power play.
Okay.
Yes, because I have this on Andy. I got it on Andy. So Andy can't play me anymore. So I can then go and tell Renita about it. So I see it. That's how I see it. That you have this information, and I can use it to my advantage.
Okay. How about you, Jillian? I mean, I think we will all admit in here to enjoying a piece of gossip at some point. If there's anybody who begs to differ, they can let me know. Right? But I think we all at some point in time enjoy
I beg to differ. You on public television, and you that right now. You're not gonna do that here, okay? I beg to differ, and I beg to differ from my friends. Okay.
Yeah, Julian. What do you think is sweet about a talk name? About dropping a little gossip here and there.
What is sweet? I don't gossip. Gossip depends on who it's coming from. It's good, nice, because once you know your source, there's some people I choose not to entertain gossip because from experience, the gossip may be sprinkled with some pepper and salt and add seasoning and all of that.
Right.
And there's some people I would listen to depending on the relationship. Because if if they call and tell you gossip, it's sweet and it's usually probably the truth,
Okay.
So, for me, it's not run with gossip because I've been in that situation before where something exactly like what you said, Andy. You saw a scenario,
right,
and the reception wasn't good. So you learn not to. Not everything you see you must repeat, and who you're repeating it to.
Right.
You gotta be extremely careful. So from my experience in life, I have learned to be cautious who I get gossip from, who I encourage, because some people I just do not encourage certain conversation. But there's others, of course, I would indulge. Gossip is sweet, Right. But depending on who is the person bringing the info, if they're trustworthy. Yes.
All right. Who's the person bringing the info? So Renita, would a gossip coming from Michelle be something that you'll have your ears attuned to because most likely it's gonna be sweet?
Well, I can't say because I never pictured her as a gossiper. She will come with you with facts, right? She will come to you with facts. And she'll make you listen, and then you have to determine, you have to listen and then determine how you are going to respond to what she's bringing. But most of the time, her things that the exchanges that we've had is normally based on facts, and it's always not really. I don't know if we could call it gossip. Most of the things is like cause for concern, and it's always about the kids or about Guyana or something like that. So.
Okay.
So knowing her, if she come with gossip, I'm gonna have to be looking at her sideways, like what's going on.
Right. Antoine,
Mental.
Michelle indicated that you might be one of the first persons she might drop this piece of gossip to. Why do you think that is so?
Because Michelle ice passed me.
I agree. Because Andy
Because
didn't
why
say
would she come to me
hypothetical Antoine.
as the first person she got to call out your mouth is my name? You understand? She ice passed me. But more importantly, because there are a couple of things that Michelle is doing when she's going to talk this name with me. First of all, she may be testing to see what kind of reaction so that she can decide how to judge up or how to downplay or the intensity of the gossip. Second is that she may already know that I am a willing recipient and she can gossip and bring this news to me. Okay? Because we have gossiped before. But here is the thing. Gossiping is a form of news. It is one of the oldest forms of communication. It's how we spread information, how we tell what's going on in our communities and in our communities and our families without having to go to the newspaper or radio or TV. But here is one of the other things about a gossip, though. A gossip can actually do a whole lot more harm. It can literally break down and destroy somebody. Because the gossip, like that they say every rumor got a little bit of truth inside. So every gossip, the question is how much of that gossip is truth and how much is lie. So when Michelle is going to come to me and going to talk this name with me, I have to now listen to what Michelle is saying. And in my mind, do a couple of quick analyses, such as how much of the details about this is Michelle projecting her own embellishments on the story to make it sound good and more spicy and juicy. Second, how much of this story is actually true? Third, how much of this story is Michelle trying to be malicious and destroy either the girl or you, Andy? Or four, how much is Michelle trying to start up strife because she's trying to test it out on me to see if I can go back and tell your wife, or to see how she can now build this and make it a stronger story to go and tell Rennie, to tell Rennie, and Rennie can carry that same story to your wife. You understand? So it's a very complex, and she build this thing nice to go and carry and talk a name. But understand something though. Here's a fundamental truth about talk name. And Jillian hinted at it just now. A dog who brings a bone carries a bone. Because when Michelle gonna come and gossip and talk your name with me, Michelle is also going to go back and tell Rennie that Antoine said. And Antoine's expression and Antoine's behavior when I tell you, because what she's doing is building and adding on to the gossip so that it becomes more credible to Rennie. So that now Rennie now is convinced that whether it is true that they see Andy and a young woman coming out of Garmont Hotel. Let me call it, or coming out to some place for Lombard Street by.
Where's Garmont Hotel?
All right, girl. If you ain't no Garmont, then you a little too small. Stay in
What class is that?
We don't even know what that is.
That's first class, second class, or
Anyway,
no class?
anyway. So Michelle wants to be able to determine how credible she can make that story to tell Rennie, because she knows that Rennie's going to go back and tell Andy's wife. And she may have a grudge to bear, an axe to grind with Andy's wife. She may also have been interested in Andy, and when Andy pick up with the current wife, she get jealous, like you said in the text. So she needs to find ways to get back at Andy's wife, and she's gonna go back to Rennie. She can go all ways to get it. That is maliciousness, and that is malicious gossip. But there's also valid gossip. When you're passing on information, you're passing on knowledge, you're passing on. So for example, it might come across a little malicious too. But if Compton, Andy, and me, we talking, and we say, and somebody say, you know, I hear that so-and-so being with this girl or being with this person, and 2 days later they start getting a burning when they pee. Okay? It's gossip. Hold on. It's gossip. But it's also a form of public health sharing. Because it means now I got to go and check and see if I get a burn-in and go to the hospital and get treatment. And if I know who the person is, I might have to quietly whisper in the person's ears, you need to go and get yourself tested and checked out because, you know, you understand? So in a sense, that gossiping can pay off, but there's also a malicious element to it too.
Okay, Antoine, in your field, the field of psychology and so, is there an explanation as to why we feel the need to embellish stories, and what makes us gravitate to the whole? I mean, you said okay, gossiping is news, but why do so many human beings find it something nice to really indulge in?
Because in the first instance, you remember before we went live, we were laughing and catching up with each other. Mm-hmm. That act of laughing that we were doing, by the very act of laughing, we relax our face muscles, we are vulnerable, we inhale, we take in more oxygen. So we enjoy a good laugh. It gives us a pleasurable feeling. But outside of the biological aspect of laughing is that it creates a sense of bonding and community commonality among us. We have a shared concern. We can laugh because when we laugh, we lower our inhibitions. Similarly, when we gossip, when we talk with each other, it's a form of social bonding. Okay? It's a way that we share knowledge, we share experiences, we share things about ourselves. We communicate both openly and covertly. Hidden messages and cues and so forth. But we also, in terms of embellishment, very often the embellishment is because we want to make ourselves seem bigger than we really are. So then it becomes not just about the story, it becomes about our ego. And so we are going to manufacture and embellish like Michelle was going to do. She is going to build all sorts of embroidery on this poor little story to make herself look better, that she actually knows she is in the know. I know I'm the authority here because I see he. You understand? And who can doubt me because I see? So she is going to build all sorts of stuff on that to make herself look good. Now, we need to ask ourselves the question, what kinds of insecurities is Michelle dealing with? That Michelle now has to embellish a story just to get it across. Okay? When them boys sit down in the back there and they're talking old-time story and the gaffing and the tantalizing, it's gossiping. But listen to how the gossip will go. Listen to who is going to build a story, who's going to embellish a story, who's going to make up as they go along, because they want to make their story sound much more authentic and believable than the last person. So they're going to say even the most outrageous things, whether it's true or not. You understand what I'm saying?
Good. All right,
So
thank you.
there's a whole construct around gossip.
Thank you for that, Antoine. All right, you tuned in to the Trend in Mind. This is the Trend in Mind 24, and our conversation this evening revolves around guilty pleasures. We'll be back shortly. Okay, we're back, and the subject is guilty pleasures. Renita, let's go into the area of the things we watch. All right, looking at television, what would you say is your favorite guilty pleasure? Whether it's a sitcom, a reality show, and why do you think it that particular show or whatever is attractive to you? You're muted. You're muted.
I have a lot of those. I have a lot of shows that I watch. So anything sports related, track and field, don't call me. I'll call you after. I'm into these series, and I love the what do you call them? The old series, like the Royals and stuff. You know, I like to learn about the past. I like to learn about archaeology and Egypt and those things. And now and then I do watch the what we call the idiot box, the stupid shows, one of those housewives, the reality television and stuff like that. But what's
your favorite reality show, and what do you find attractive about it?
Jeopardy. Is Jeopardy a reality show?
No, I won't
Jeopardy's a game show.
I mean, they would put it under the reality category, but I won't really find it as a as a reality show. Right. All right, so you don't really get into much of what we call it nonsense, right?
No, I do. I watch. I used to watch Love and Hip Hop, and I used to watch, and I still watch Married to Medicine. But recently, the behavior, like Jillian and I were talking, we contributing to this nonsense because how they behave, and sometimes it's very derogatory. We just had this conversation this week.
Okay, interesting.
When we mentioned that we're contributing to this nonsense because how they fight and how they put each other down instead of uplifting and stuff like that. They do have episodes where they do uplift because they did have the march on Washington and they did have all the different things, but the infighting and the calling each other the B word and stuff like that, we just we talked, I think it was 2 days ago, that we're contributing to this nonsense by watching. We boosting the ratings of this nonsense, and I said,
don't find the juicy parts juicy then.
Most of the juicy parts is, I don't even know if they have juicy parts because they're tearing each other down.
Okay.
So you can't even say it's juicy. It's like right. It's not something that would pass on and said, "Oh, we can do this." It's not. There's no takeaways, no positive takeaways.
Okay.
You know, it makes you feel like I said, like we said, like, why am I even watching this? What am I getting from this? What can I take from this and learn and share? So it made us feel like something is wrong with us for tuning into that. And I'm telling you, we just had this discussion, I think it was Thursday,
Okay.
about those shows.
Okay. Michelle, as an educator, a principal, is there anything that you look on television that that side of you might be ashamed to admit that, hey, I, a principal, actually look at this thing?
Well, I'm human and I'm quite normal. So
Really?
if yes, really, can you believe that? And I'm actually going to say this publicly. Yes. So I am quite normal. However, television is not my thing. I have my guilty pleasures. If you get it, well, but television is really not my thing. I get more into the politics or, the reality shows. I get enough of it at school. I really don't need it anymore. I see them play by play. I see when they compose them. I don't need anymore. However, I think anyone who knows me knows that what you see is what you get. So if you come with Carnival, if you tell me Juve Morning, but not the television. I don't know them. I know Housewives by the name. I really don't know them. So I'm there like, oh, please don't ask me that question.
Okay. not your cup of tea. What about you, Compton? Are you do you go into the belly of television?
When in terms of soap operas, it took me back years to Guyana and the radio.
Right.
Where you would have, that is the only time when I really would follow a story. Exactly. That's the only time. I have never gotten into soaps. It's not in terms of television.
Girl from Susanburg, tights from Susanburg.
Right.
My bones and my flute.
Let the lion loose. Let the lion loose.
Let the lion loose. Yes.
Dr. Paul.
Right. So that's when you initially talked about it. That it took me back there. But in terms of today's, I would have the History Channel, maybe definitely Steve Harvey comedy. Things like you have these like the mechanic shows and so on. There are series,
Yep.
So that's the type of thing I would watch.
Okay.
Yeah, like I binge on Chopped, and I binge on those. I like to see those beachfront bargain sales, and when they take these houses and they convert them, how they renovate them. I binge on those.
Okay, cool. Jillian, as someone, you bake cakes, you're in that sector. Are one of your guilty pleasures, do you gravitate to a lot of chocolate, ice cream, anything of that sort, or you stay away from those things?
No, no, that's not my guilty pleasure. Those ice cream used to be my guilty pleasure, but it doesn't like me anymore. So I had to stop taking it. I cannot do dairy anymore.
Right.
But in terms of guilty pleasures, Renita said I do strictly for relaxation purposes. I do watch television. I'm into the period pieces. Those period shows, I will binge on those. But I like my reality TV now and again. And as Renita said, we were talking about why do we watch this nonsense? It's becoming so ridiculous now. It doesn't even make sense. But for me, indulging in certain things is purely for relaxation purposes.
Right.
So distress, unwind. Because there's certain things you cannot unwind. I can't unwind on politics that gets you worked up. There are times when I'm into politics, I'm following it. But when I just want to relax and unwind and just have a good laugh, you find a good show on the television, if it's the comedy shows or something. But guilty pleasure, it's something that, to me, it's healthy. I think we need to relax. We need leisure. We need to unwind. So we have to indulge in some things. When what you indulge in becomes unhealthy, that's when the problem comes about.
Okay.
Yes.
Antoine,
I
what's
agree with
the,
you.
what's the connection between, okay, the whole guilty pleasure thing has to do with the fact that we feel some sense of guilt about what we're going to do or about what we're indulging in. Why is it that the guilt aspects is what seems to make the pleasure even more pleasurable?
Because it's often the forbidden. It is the concept of, if you are forbidden or there's an injunctive against you doing something. Remember, when you were a child, you were told not to go put your hand on the stove, but you still will go and put your hand on the stove until you get burned, and then you realize, you make the association between a hot stove and the pain that you feel, so you're not going to do that again. So there is still in all of us, and I think a couple of weeks ago, I asked the question, how many of us have had our inner child grow up? Has our inner child actually matured along with us, so that we are no longer going to feel guilty about doing certain things? We know we're not supposed to do certain things, then we are not going to do that, right? So on the other hand, on the flip side of that, if it is something that you enjoy and it gives you pleasure, then why should it be guilty? Why should you experience any sense of a negative emotion or reaction to something that gives you pleasure? So for example, we're talking about looking at reality TV shows. How many of us, even as adults, whether we will want to admit it or not, look at porn, different types of porn? How many of us will then masturbate, whether male or female, and experience that pleasure? But then when we are finished, we will switch off the link, and we will start to feel bad about ourselves. Why did I do that? That is not healthy. That is not right. I should not be doing that. And we beat ourselves up. But we had a really good moment of pleasure. We experienced a really intense orgasm. Okay? And I'm talking both male and female experiencing orgasm. That's a natural human function. It's where we experience pleasure, and it has a lot of neurobiological effects for us. It helps with our thinking. It helps with our sleeping. There's a whole lot that goes on there. But we have become conditioned by religious belief systems to deny aspects of ourselves, including denying our sexuality, denying who we are, our own bodily functions. Do you understand? And so when that happens, then we begin to feed into this whole guilt. So we play this cat and mouse game. We develop an ongoing tension in our minds between when are we going to enjoy pleasure and how are we going to feel afterwards, whether we should do it or not. You understand what I'm saying, Andy? And so you're on mute. And so the thing about it is that how much has religion and religious belief systems and practices so infiltrated our human psyche that it prevents us from being who we are as humans. Now, understand something too, that religious belief systems throughout generations, and I'm not just talking the last 2,000 years, I'm talking generations, millennia, were were instrumental in highlighting our relationship with who we perceive a God to be. Because we as humans always did not think that we always thought that there's something bigger than us outside of ourselves. But how religion has actually morphed over the centuries is one where it has now taken over control of our lives. And our simple functioning is from a religious perspective. So take, for example, look at the Hindus. They got a temple. They got temples, not just one, but they have temples with various sexual positions of the Kama Sutra carved into stone. Let's take a look at the Assyrians. Let's take a look at some of the Greeks, the ancient Greeks and the Assyrians, ancient cultures. Let's take a look at some African cultures. They celebrated sex. They celebrated what it meant to be human. You understand what I'm saying? So when we're going to talk about pleasure and guilt, it's the equivalent of bitter and sweet. How can the two go together? Pleasure is pleasure. Guilt is to make you feel bad about experiencing pleasure. And why should you feel bad about experiencing pleasure? Now, except as in Jillian's case, where she's just talking about the ice cream, is that she knows as a process of elimination and experience over time that the dairy, that she may have become lactose intolerant. And so the dairy is going to cause digestive issues. So she's got to stop eating it, even though she likes it. And she may risk every now and again a quarter pint of Häagen-Dazs.
No,
Okay?
no.
I'm just saying. But she's gonna risk a little bit.
Jillian wants to correct you there, not Häagen-Dazs.
I don't even feel that. Yeah.
But what I'm saying is she might risk a little bit because she remember how it tastes and how she like it and so forth, even though she knows what the consequences will be. As we were saying, Guyana, was sweetened goat mouth a hotty belly. Okay? So we know that. But why would we ascribe guilt to something that we know we enjoy, that we get pleasure out of? Why would we do that? Why would we torture ourselves? And this feeds into the other construct of second guessing ourselves. Because when we start to second guess ourselves, then we begin to undermine our own self and our own confidence. So if I am going to enjoy pleasure and I know that I am going to be questioning that pleasure afterwards, then that pleasure is now reduced. I'm not going to enjoy the pleasure as much as I really wanted to. Because I know that I will be questioning and second guessing myself afterwards. So I'm really not enjoying it. I'm just going through the motions. You understand what I'm saying?
Yep.
Yeah. Anton, when it gets to that point when you start second guessing, it no longer becomes pleasurable. That you don't
I agree
anymore. Yes.
But listen to me. But how many of us go through with it, even though we know we will be questioning and analyzing and blaming ourselves for even experiencing that pleasure, for even simply experiencing it, enjoying it, allowing our bodies to enter into the sense, to experience the full gamut of the sensations that are involved with that experience. Why would we then question that? You understand what I'm saying?
Yep. All right. We're discussing guilty pleasures.
I would like to say a word about
Go ahead,
on I'm going back to religion and the role religion plays. And over the years, religion has been used as a stabilizing force and a mechanism of control. And so one in dealing with one's bodily functions, that is where the conflict comes in. where you have a religion, regardless of what religion is, it is there to ensure that the society perpetuates itself and it doesn't become destructive by indulging in pleasures that may rip apart the society.
No, Compton, I agree with you.
I disagree.
No,
to some.
hold on. I agree with you on a point, because religion has become, okay, in both the Old and New Testament, there are a few occasions in the Old Testament where we have clear examples of sex and sexuality and sexual expression. We don't see that in the New Testament. The Christian church does not like to talk about sex and sexuality. Okay? Because it makes them uncomfortable. Let me give you an example that just a couple of days ago, the Roman Catholic Church celebrated the Feast of the Saints of the Ugandan Martyrs. In 1866, the king of Buganda in Uganda was gay. He used to have relationships with many of his pages and courtiers. He was being pressured by the Muslims who were coming from East Africa and the Arabian Peninsula, as well as he was being pressured by the French fathers, missionaries from France. The missionaries came into Buganda, into his kingdom, saw what was going on. They claimed that they did not like what was going on, the practice and whatever it was. And they tried to tell him that he must stop doing this. And he said to them, you can't come into my kingdom and tell me how I must run my kingdom. You can't come into my house and tell me how I must live my life. And they refused to listen. And he killed several of his pages because they had converted to Christianity and had stopped doing what they were doing with him, because the missionary fathers told them that it was a sin, that it was evil. Okay? Because this is something that's been going on for not just in his kingdom, but for centuries among humans. Okay? So the Christian fathers came in and exploited something and brought in their own belief systems into the kingdom of Buganda and exploited that. In 1968, Pope Pius VI made them martyrs. Recently, Pope Francis made them saints. So what we've seen is that the church is actually celebrating coming into indigenous cultures and transforming them through Christianity. That the church is saying that the indigenous relationship, the indigenous practices is no longer valid, is no longer important. You are heathens, you are evil, you are demonic. This is the true religion, Christianity, and what we come in and tell you to do, that is what you must do. Okay? That is what I'm saying, is that human sexuality has now become suborned to religion. That we end up feeling guilty by just simply masturbating, whether we are male or female, because we're going to refer to the Bible that we were told of the sin of onanism, about casting your seed on the ground. Why was that? And I'm sorry that Andy changed the topic, because in a sense, there is a relationship between what we're talking today and the conversation we were supposed to have on cultures and traditions. There is a significant relationship between the two. And to understand that a lot of the things that we do were born out of human experiences of trial and error. But then religion came along and decided and codified and said, this is how you must be, this is what you must do, and cast everything else aside. That is fundamentally human.
Yeah, we are still going to have that conversation about traditions at another time thing. And I did select this particular conversation because I did have some kind of connection. Now, Michelle, you were saying that you disagreed with Compton. You want to go ahead?
Yeah, I disagree with Compton to some extent. I understand that religion came in, but I don't believe that it came in to help people to know how to behave. I think it was a control mechanism. I believe Antoine just touched on that. So it was a means of them getting what they wanted, a type of greed and taking away of things. And for whatever reason, the lack of confidence within certain cultures allowed people of other cultures to be able to come in
Precisely.
and make them feel that this is something that
That they're less than. Yes, I agree with you.
What puzzles me is after being learned, how we can still hold ourselves accountable or attached to those things. After we have gone through and listen, we're spiritual beings, right? I believe we're spiritual beings. I believe our body goes to the ground, you know, back to the carbon, nitrogen, oxygen, going back. And I believe that breath that we inhale is life. So I do believe that we are spiritual beings because the breath, you don't really see it. And we connect to different things such as music, such as expressions, and this big one is sex, but sex is just one, right? We are hooked on several different things that allow us to really express ourselves and feel good about ourselves. And when you take that away from someone and give them what you think should happen, you're actually taking their life away. And we come true as a suppressed people because we're so far removed from what really gives us the feeling of life. And we continue like that, and we're happy in it because we're hoping for another life to enjoy. And I don't understand why it is so difficult for us to enjoy our lives, pretty much. Why is it so difficult? I don't get it. I do know why we feel guilty. I do know all the things we were told. I do know, you know, and what's even worse, if a person, especially from our culture, decides that, you know what, I'm a free being, I'm going to do what works for me. The amount of criticism, the boring, unhappy people want to give to that person who's really having fun, it's amazing. They want for 1 minute stop and say, that person look like they're really happy. I need to get happy too. You know, they won't do that. They'll sit there and just whine and wallow in their sorrow. You know, me, I'm not going to do that. And I don't have an answer for why we do it, but we do.
And I will suggest to you, Michelle, that there is actually research that tells us that religiously repressive countries or societies that are religious have significant religious repression, that a majority of their population struggle with mental health, including depression.
And they have more crime.
Well,
the
that
crime
too.
rate is very high because the hatred and the anger within oneself when they are not happy. You know what it is to be divided within your own self? Now, I can walk away from a friend. I can walk away from family. But how do you walk away from yourself?
Away from yourself. I agree with you. There's another aspect. There are two other aspects to what you're saying there just now, Michelle. And one is that for Black and people of color who are the product or who experienced forced diaspora. Okay? Our ancestors were taken from what they knew. They were taken from the life, the culture, the vibrancy, the celebration of themselves as humans and their relationship with what is around them. The land, the trees, the forest, the river, the earth, the sun, the rain. You understand? Regardless if they might anthropomorphize it, but that is what they knew. And look, Look, for example, at when black people dance, our dancing is sexual in nature. If the waist, the hip gyrating simulates a sex act. It is sexual because that is who we are. But then watch this. Here's the other thing that I think you hit on something just now, which also puzzles me, is why, if you have some degree of education and critical thinking skills, you have learned critical thinking, you have learned how to discern between the truth and what is false, and you have since learned as an educated person that your belief systems, that which you grew up with, is real bullshit, it's false. How do you still cling to that? What does that say about you as an individual that you're clinging to that? What does it say about you being true to yourself? How much of a hypocrite are you? How really untrue are you that you know what the truth is, but still you're going to cling to it? For what reason? Because it might give you a momentary salve, a momentary escape. You understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, but Antoine, I just think that, you know, let me speak for myself, right? Our culture, the culture we grew up in, the culture that I love, we did not have very much mental health exposure, right? We never understood what it means to sit and meditate. You know, we did some form of meditation if you were doing yoga and this type of thing, but to really sit and meditate and enjoy your breath, your being, right? We were never taught that. We were taught to really work hard. We don't have time for idleness. Don't waste your time. And if you came to a society that has those things, but you are bent on making life, people become caught up in, because they don't, so you might go through a history class or something and you get a certain level of learning. And from that level of learning, you say, yeah, you know, this makes sense or whatever, but you don't really have the time. A lot of people don't have that time to really sit and reflect deeply on what it means. How does this affect me? What am I supposed to think with reference to this? Instead, we're busy moving. So while I may have been exposed to some things, I am also very conscious that most people don't have this type of deep discussion where they take time to really think through it, not because they don't want to, but because that opportunity doesn't present itself. How many people in our culture would feel open about going to speak with a mental health counselor? They may tell you they're going to a doctor, but they won't tell you what the issue is about. Because we feel that whatever is happening to us, you depressed, girl, get up and go find something to do. What's wrong with you? What depression you're talking about, you know? And this is how we came up. And people are afraid of the unknown. They're afraid to venture out. They're not sure what's gonna happen, you know? And so I just wish we could have time to really give people time to be able to experience what it means to deeply think and reflect and really think through what makes me happy, what brings real freedom and pleasure to myself. And I'm not fully there yet, but I know I can work, I'm working to it. Time, people need time.
Okay, thank you, Michelle. I'm going to stay with you a little, Michelle. You know, we started to go, and Antoine, in terms of our history, our roots, our culture, our traditions. Now, on the issue of guilty pleasure, Michelle, I know you're very passionate about your own road. Same with Antoine. Now, what would you guys say to somebody who is apparently a very passionate Pan-Africanist, a supporter of the Black Lives movement, Black Lives Matter movement, and that person likes or enjoys looking at Hallmark television, right, and Bollywood films? Do you see any inconsistency with their guilty pleasure?
But why is it a guilty pleasure?
Exactly.
Why is it a guilt? Why?
No, I don't see it.
Why is guilt? Why does guilt have to be attached to it? If they look at it like Jillian and Rennie were saying, they look at TV sometimes to just unwind, just turn off, switch off. They might look at Hallmark and Lifetime channel. Okay, that's fine. I look at cartoons sometimes on Saturday morning, and sometimes I laugh, sometimes I don't. But it allows my mind to just observe the absurdities, the idiocy that takes place in a cartoon, and I just, allow my mind to drift. But it allows me to shut down for a moment.
Mm-hmm.
And I may experience some pleasure, but I'm not going to feel guilty about doing that.
Right, but remember
what Andy was touching on is the contradiction.
I don't see a contradiction.
Remember the guilt is yeah, go ahead.
Is what we consider contradiction, because what he's looking at is someone. I have a thought.
I know somebody who's supposedly Afrocentric or conscious.
Right.
I agree with you.
But in my mind, or in the person who is judging that individual's mind, they think their belief system is that a person who does this should do that. That's a belief system. So,
but that is also dictating to somebody else.
Yes, but it doesn't stop us from saying that you're a good girl if you do X. You're a good boy if you do this. You're African because you're here. Let me move. I'll come back.
According to whose standards? You're good or bad according to whose standards? Who judging who?
Yeah. All right. Let's take a brief break while Michelle.
I would rephrase your question there, Andy.
No, I'm coming back to it.
You don't need to rephrase it.
No.
So
No. I'm not talking about the question you asked before before we went into the break. There was a question that came up in his promotion just now about guilty pleasure. So I would rephrase it. But anyway, go on. Sorry.
All right. Yeah. The question before we're looking at the guilt aspect, and remember that guilt aspect sometimes it can come from people on the outside, but it can also come within our own selves. All right. We supposedly are passionate about this particular cause, yet when we sit down to relax. All right, and if someone should, who follow us, should stand beside us as we, we will feel uncomfortable, right? Because we will figure that they may or may not ask, but we don't know. But we figure that, hey, they, how come you watching?
They'll judge us.
I thought you were. So it's to speak to that, all right, as to the whole issue of the guilt and how does it get there, right? Now, Jillian and Renita, in such a situation as the one I would have described, this avid, Black Lives Matter person who is into Hallmark and Bollywood films and things, do you find yourselves judging? Would you find yourself judging such an individual, or do you look at it and say, no, there's no issue with that for me? Jillian.
Okay, so for Andy, that person you just talked about is me. I look at everything because I am interested in cultures. I just have a fascination in different cultures. I like to see how they, what they eat, what they drink, how they behave, how they relate. So for me, I watch everything under the sun, all cultures. So I don't judge people. And when it comes to guilty pleasures, Antoine said, why use the word guilty? Pleasure, it gives you a positive feeling. You feel good. Why should we feel guilty? And if you're doing it in your own private time, I ain't telling people what I'm doing or what I'm looking at. I'm getting pleasure out of what I'm doing, and I'm going to indulge in it. I'm going to watch every culture, every show under the sun that I find interesting. So for me, I'm at the age where I am not answering to nobody, and I do what I want to do, what makes me happy. I am not too interested in what another person thinks about what I do and what I say. So that's where I am right now with that.
Right.
So Renita
stemming from Jillian's own response, have you found that with time, your own sense of guilt, has evolved, whereby maybe 15, 20 years ago, you may have felt guilty about doing whatever, but now you're comfortable with yourself. Have you found that it has evolved?
I'm inclined to agree with Antoine that we need to drop that guilty thing, because if you're getting pleasure or you're enjoying what you're doing, why be guilty about it? And listening to what is being discussed, it makes me think about how we judge a book by its cover. Because somebody is this way, they should not be indulging in XYZ. You can't look at somebody and figure that this person can't play cricket. Look at Anton. Anton can't cook. He don't look like he could cook. So you just can't judge, or not because I'm an avid supporter of Black lives and Black events, and I can't appreciate and support something from the Indian culture or the Asian culture or the Caucasian or stuff like that. No. Right now I'm looking at a series I keep telling Jillian about, is about the Muslims and the Islamic culture. And you would be surprised to see how similar we are. They say Allah, we say God, different, but this the same. Most of their doctrines and their training and how they bring their children up is exactly the same. We just read the Quran, we read the Bible, different things. So for me, I tend not to judge anybody. And I like Jillian, I like to learn. You have to know, in order to exist in this world and in order to be prepared for anything that could come at you, you have to be familiar with almost everything, almost every culture, So you just can't say, because I'm a Black Lives Matter, I must just do everything Black and just stay in this little cocoon. And no, we're supposed to be a blend of almost everything, because after all, we are a blend of almost all the different races, the different cultures out there. We're not unique, and we don't, I think the human race is made up of different various cultures, religion, and everything into one. And if you were to ever look and study them, you'll see that they're intertwined, and they each cross, like everybody took bits and pieces of from we're supposedly the original people. So if you were to look, you will see there's bits and pieces of our culture in everybody else's culture, and we might look at their culture and think that there's bits and pieces of our culture in other people's culture. So you just can't say because I'm pro-black, I should just stick to pro-black. No.
However, while I agree with everything everyone has said, Renita, you made the point I was about to make. There is a time when pleasure can create guilt, and if you want to call it guilty pleasure. So, I am Sister Michelle Loire, who told you sex before marriage is absolutely wrong. There should be no sex before marriage. A woman should wait until that time. But I know within myself that I am busy having sex with pastor wherever under the pretext that we're studying the Bible. Okay? I'm enjoying it, but I have to feel guilty when I come to tell you what you shouldn't do, right? That is guilty pleasure. And that is guilty pleasure because I have created that guilt because I am preaching one thing. I am not because you're looking at what I'm doing, but because of what I am saying should happen. And what I don't say to you, this is what you should do, but I'm unable to do it, so I'm doing that. That's not what I said to you. I'm saying to you, you know what? I am preserving myself for the right person, and that's what we're supposed to do. But on the contrary, I am doing something different. So I am living a false life. Yes, it's hypocrisy. However, it is pleasurable. That's why I continue to do it. And I ought to feel guilt as a result of it. Right? So that's where I see guilty pleasure.
So you do as I say. Don't do as I do.
Marcia Phillips, one of the persons that commented, she said, because some pleasure, while it's pleasurable, can make you feel guilty based on convictions and judgments. So that's basically what you're saying, Michelle.
On your own, though, not other people's. On your own convictions.
It seems that some people feel guilty based on other people's judgment and conviction.
That should not happen. And that happens because of our belief system. That's what we were discussing earlier. So people tend to feel that, you know what, if I see somebody who is pro-black, everything for them is African this, African that, then, you know what, how dare them be married to a white woman? Got it? How dare they find love in another race? That's wrong. We shouldn't do that, right? But if this person preaches to you, the same person, that I cannot love this person because they're of another race, then goes without saying, because you could feel this way today and tomorrow you change your opinion and you're free to say, I used to think this way and I'm moving on. That's your right. However, when you continue the same thing and you're doing something different, yes, you ought to feel guilty. With respect to people judging you, I believe it's a process, but we have got to come to a time and place when we recognize that this beautiful life of ours, though it may be, belongs to us, we need to enjoy it while it lasts.
And not feel guilty about it.
Yes, because I would like to get back to the whole thing about guilt. And yes.
About who?
Guilt.
Oh, I thought you were talking about me.
Antoine. Yes, because the in terms of our society, it's a Christian construct that's built into our society, which prescribes our modes of behavior. So for me, in terms of this guilt trip we're having, we have to deal with Christianity and the various rules and regulations that we have been indoctrinated with to say that, you know, this particular action or indulgence is against God, and you're befriending Satan. So for me, it's a religious construct. It's a Christian religious construct. If you were to go outside of Christianity, you will see that the various religions allows for that type of indulgence, if you may want to use that word. So I'm really concerned about, we have to be reflective of how the 400 years plus, or even more, the 2,000 years of this ingrained Christian culture that we have been put in to absorb within ourselves.
Thank you, Compton. Antoine, do you want to speak to Desria's comment?
Yeah, she has an interesting comment. I'm still not.
I don't disagree with Desri's comment. As a matter of fact, when we started talking about guilt and pleasure, and I made the example of a child going and putting their hands on a hot stove, and you learning you're not going to do that, or expand that a little bit more and say you are told that you should not, you know, masturbate. You should not play with yourself. But you wake up in the morning with an erection, and the only way you can get some relief is to masturbate. Okay? But when you're finished, you feel this guilt because you're afraid, as Desiree just said, you're gonna get caught. You have to hurry quick and go and wash your underwear so that your mother won't find it. You hope that you didn't make too much noise. You understand? They tell you you're gonna get hair growing in your palm, your hands, and if you do too often, you're gonna get blind. Okay, so all these things they tell you to stop you from enjoying a moment of pleasure, so that when you do engage in it, there's the guilt that is like a hammer behind you. Why did you do that? You know you're gonna get into trouble. You know that somebody might hear you. Okay, so yes, I agree with Desiree. There is the sense of penalty that accompanies the pleasure, and it is designed, it is intended to prevent you from enjoying pleasure. You understand? Because like I said earlier, we are sexual beings. But religion has stepped in and have conditioned us to deny that aspect of ourselves. As Rennie was talking just now, that she has been listening and looking at all sorts of some other religions and seeing the similarities. Okay, but also how many differences. But I just want to come back to this conversation, the discussion just now about Black Lives Matter. And yes, I agree that there are many in our communities who are proponents for the whole Black and the whole ethnic culture, Black consciousness. And they don't live that authentically. They don't live it authentically. So take, for example, and I really don't have a problem with this woman, and I think she did incredible work, right? The journalist, Nicole, who did the 1619 Project, why would she then bother to apply for tenure at UNC Chapel Hill? Okay? What is the construct surrounding tenure? Tenure is a white institutional construct that says that you are set in that position as a professor for the rest of your life, that you can get an income going on for the rest of life, and you're entitled to a pension and health benefits. But is there any other way that she could get to do that? There is Cornel West, who is a big proponent of Afrocentrism. But Cornel West is a professor at Harvard and is just getting upset because Harvard will not offer him tenure. Why would Harvard offer him tenure if he is so much against the white establishment, but yet he's still part of that white establishment? What kind of hypocritical dichotomy is there? You understand? So in that sense, I agree, Andy. In that sense, if someone who purports to be going after and supporting a particular ideology and then doing something on the side, that when they do it on the side, they need to feel guilt because they're not being true. As Michelle was saying, they're not being authentic. They're not being true to themselves. And yes, it's a dual behavior. And it's, some people may even want to jump and say dual personalities, because it could be split that way too. Because it could be for economic reasons, it could be for social reasons, it could be for purely personal, hedonistic, or egotistical reasons. Any number of reasons. Does that make sense now?
Yes, certainly. All right. We get into the close, as always.
May I say something, Andy? There is also
Go ahead.
a sense of there could be some amount of like the person can feel intrigued just because you're getting away. Like there's a certain amount of stimulation that can come also from doing that, right? Based on who that individual is and what their mental capacity is. So some people become a little stimulated, like, so, you know what? My wife is around the corner there, right? I got this girl here I like. I'm gonna catch this quick on the side, right? And then I'm gonna come back outside and be normal. And the level of excitement that you get just doing that, you know, some people live for that because of the sphere that they're in. So there are a number of reasons why people move behind that type of hypocritical behavior. And anyhow, it comes from some form of gap that they have within themselves, right? So.
And that is called adrenaline rush, Michelle.
Yes, yes.
Because if you can get a quickie on the side of the road, or behind a dumpster, or in a dance hall in the bathroom, where nobody can hear, nobody can catch you, you got to get it done quick. That is the most pleasurable experience you could ever have in the entire life, because you know you got a short time to get it done.
Oh, you
Anyway.
know.
Antoine had lots of experience.
Hold on, Andy. I'm waiting for the gossip start. Now let me see who gonna go with what now when Karen say.
Oh man, you had a good time.
The
Do I sit down here looking you like I was a saint?
You never professed to be a saint.
No.
All right.
One. I would like to get back to Antoine's comment about the duality, and more than often than not, it is a survival mode where, in order to ensure that the person can live in both worlds, therefore the person has to engage in activities that would provide that person with acceptance in both worlds. So the person is engaging in these, or living in these two worlds, so that it is a means so that he can survive fit in within the society. So
I
for
disagree.
Me, by all means, carry on.
No, I disagree. Because
they're not being authentic to themselves.
No,
but not only that. Hold on. That is very dangerous, Compton. That is very dangerous, and I'll tell you why. A young black boy let's say between 12 to 15, discovers that he likes the boy next door, okay? He can't suppress these feelings, but his parents have said to him, we want no anti-man in this house, okay? He has seen commentary, he has seen he's seen his family members making comments when they see images on the TV, okay? We don't want none of that in this house. So what does he do?
Hide.
He sneaks out and meets up with the friend around the corner, okay? And engages in likely unprotected sexual behavior. Here are a couple things that are gonna happen there. What happens if he contracts a communicable disease, such as HPV, herpes, HIV, syphilis, gonorrhea, chlamydia? How is he then going to tell his parents, I got a burning down there?
Naja.
Okay, hold on. Second thing is, because he knows he is doing something illicit, something that is not permitted, that he will get into serious trouble if his parents find out, he starts to sneak around. And having to, and in him is a conflict to reconcile the two. And the inability to reconcile that person that sneaks around the corner to the person that is living at home leads to such conflict that he may likely descend into various forms of escape, including alcohol and substance use. And that becomes a downward spiral because he is unable to reconcile those two parts of him. That the authentic part of him is the one that wants to run around the corner, but instead bring the corner to the front gate and not live that hidden life that he has been forced to live at home. And let's ask ourselves the question, how many men in Guyana are living that dual life? How many men in Guyana, because this is a Guyanese environment, and it doesn't make Guyanese men any more special or different than men all over the world. But how many men in the Guyanese culture live that dual life? And for them, for many years in their lives, there is this consistent conflict that is seemingly unresolved because culture and society and family tell them, this is how you have to be. But inside, this is where they want to be. So there's a problem with that duality. In as much as it will give you a momentary pleasure, a rush of adrenaline, a stimulation and excitement, your heart beat faster, you start sweating, you feel good. But it's the after effect. And how then do you reconcile that exciting feeling with the person you have to come home and be when you come home to your mother? How do you reconcile those two?
On that same question, I wanted to close Compton by asking the question, in situations such as these, and we're not talking just about, just sexual circumstances, right? Can situations like these produce a true split personality?
Definitely.
Where somebody actually becomes two persons or live two different lives?
I mean, that's the whole definition of a split personality, where the mental, they think in two different worlds. They live in two different worlds, so they think in two different worlds. So they see themselves in one situation as X and in another situation as Y. And so for me, I'm going back to where this conflict, and this person is trying to resolve that conflict. So that person is engaging in actions in both worlds that will allow that person to become comfortable in both worlds. So that's a classic definition of a dual personality. Yes, the person can live that 2 lives. Yes.
But it's not healthy.
But there's a
It's
lot
not
of
healthy.
people in our culture force a lot of people to live that way.
I understand that,
Mhm.
but it's not healthy.
Yeah.
Listen,
It's
and Michelle hinted
actually
at something a little earlier. Not because we've been doing something consistently all the time means that it's the right thing.
Mm-hmm.
We have been doing things because of circumstance or environment or condition at the moment, and that become the norm. But that does not necessarily mean that it continues to be the right way all the time, and it should be applied across the board all the time. And that is a classical definition
of
of a split
dissociative.
personality.
Yeah.
It's
Yeah.
dissociative disorder.
Yeah.
Okay, and as long as
Dissociative
you've got a
identity
dissociation,
disorder.
there is a conflict.
Serious.
You cannot be comfortable in any one of those two worlds. So the question then is, in which world will you be comfortable? Will you be comfortable in a sneaking around world where you get a rush of adrenaline and excitement, or will you be comfortable in the world where you are not as stimulated? Which world are you going to be comfortable in? And
The
how
one that
then?
you're more accepted in.
But then how then do you reconcile and achieve stasis, a oneness? How do you reconcile and achieve oneness, a homogeneity? How do you do that? When do you do that? And that is why the issue is, if you continue to support and encourage that kind of duality, then you are going to continue to see that a number of people in our communities, as Michelle said in the chat, beat up their wives and perpetuate all sorts of other harm and violence, not only on others, but on themselves.
That's what
Because it's an attempt to escape, but it's also an attempt to try to reconcile, which they don't know how. Ooh,
Right, and society, a lot has to do, and a lot of it has to do with society not accepting them. You know, not accepting them, not accepting their lifestyles and stuff like that. And some always want to hide.
Renian, what is the nucleus of society? What's the microcosm of society? It starts in the family.
Yeah.
It starts in the family. So if families, so for example, y'all got me on this thing mostly to talk about mental health. And mental health is a construct that we need to start talking a lot more about, to break down the shame and the stigma surrounding it, so that it becomes more normal to talk about mental health. I can talk openly about my mental health, but let me ask any one of the 5 of you, if you have situations in your personal lives at this very moment, do you know what to do? Do you know how to talk about it? Do you still hide behind the Guyanese cultural dynamic that says you're not going to talk about it? It's nobody's business.
I don't.
No.
I'm just using that as an example. But you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, I don't. And I get a lot of
the idea is, if we want to change society, Renian, we have to begin at the family. So in each of your individual households, you have to start having conversations to normalize certain things.
Yep, encourage them to come out and speak.
Yeah,
and
you've got to start breaking cycles.
Right.
And even if you encourage them to come out and start speaking, you have got to start learning how to listen.
Yep. Right.
And not running to jump with a judgment, or run and get the wild cane, or run and get the belt, or the sewing machine card. You understand?
Nobody got sewing machine.
Exactly.
Some people might still have a singer, you know.
Singers modernize now.
You know what I would like to say?
Remember the iron cord used to promote?
Yes.
Yeah. The iron cord, and you know how many wild canes we threw away, please.
Yeah.
I still want to say, if you ask a person, let me see a very obvious one. Maybe if you ask the person who has been blind all their life, how beautiful is the sunshine? You know, the sun, experiencing the sunshine is beautiful. They may think when they feel that heat, that warmth, that is what you are speaking about. But they do not understand because they have not experienced that. So there are many persons who are within my culture and my work environment here and at home, it's not only Guyana, who, myself too, to some extent, who have not really experienced a full life of joy and happiness, And if
Contentment.
we really taste that freedom, it would force us to move away from the things because it would not matter what someone else says because
But
we are free. But it is that process. And to me, it takes time. It takes people reflecting. I mentioned that before. It takes people staying in a positive frame. It takes people looking at transformations and how you work through transformations. It is a process. And I find that when you go through that process, if we force it on to people, it tends to become a turn away and we lose them because sometimes they feel like you're beating up on me, to hell with this. I don't want to hear it. You got your own issues, and people tend to attack. So I
Right, they're
think,
not ready.
right, I think allowing people in discussion, listening, as you mentioned, Antoine, and working through things. So when people come and say, I feel this way, but I want to do this, but what is causing that difference? Is it a belief or is it a fact? What is causing this? How do we process it? And it's working through this and having groups where you can really sit and talk through these things that would allow for that change that we really need and allow us to really truly love each other and truly care about each other and truly enjoy life.
And let me just tie what you're saying, Michelle, with where we started at the beginning of this conversation with Andy about the gossip. Because the gossip can either reinforce or it reinforces stereotypes, it reinforces moral values as well, but it can also destroy.
Yep. And persons have to be very, very strong and secure in themselves in order to endure some of the gossip. Like you said, Antoine, in the beginning, gossip can be informative, it could be very malicious, and it could be very detrimental to some folks. So, yep, we have to be very careful.
We've come to the end of another interesting conversation, and I want us to close off with something that Antoine said, in which he was making a point, and he said, "In which world are we comfortable?" I think it's a broad question that we can begin to ask ourselves. You using the same kind of scenario that Antoine, every now and then he comes back to, where you look at yourself naked inside the mirror, right? And you ask yourself that question, in which world are you comfortable? And I think by giving ourselves a proper answer, maybe we can begin to have an easier time, with what we do.
But you know what, Andy? Michelle was saying something just now that I think is extremely valuable. Where she talked about, she alluded to our sense of contentment, our sense of that joy. And it's the absence of that joy that keeps us going and going and going. And we never really truly stop. So we keep moving from one crisis, one trauma to the next. And we live for that because that's what keeps us going. That's what's driving our engine. But if we should stop for a minute, because we have not had the luxury all our lives, and our ancestors' lives have passed on to us, we have not had the luxury to stop and experience the feeling of the sun on our skin, really and truly feel the warmth of the sun on the skin and feel the cooling breeze over our skins. Because that means we need to take a vacation. That means, can we afford to take a vacation? That means, well, how am I going to go away? And we start to build all sorts of excuses and reasons. But it means being able to stop. But more importantly, if we can experience that sense of contentment with who we are, that comfort level with where we are within ourselves, then nothing else matters. Like Jillian said earlier, at this point in time in her life, she ain't paying attention to nobody. Because what she was demonstrating is that she has achieved a certain level of contentment where nobody's business is going to come and upset her.
Yep.
And as long as you can get to that point, now there are a lot of factors that will prevent you from getting to that point. Getting and keeping a job, waking up every day like Renyan has to travel since 4:30 in the morning to get to the job. Okay, dealing with all sorts of stresses and drama. Okay, but being able to step back from that for a moment against the real world, because as Michelle and Rennie and Jill, we have been conditioned to continually working. How many of us are able to take us when the weekend comes? We just had a long weekend. How many of us were able to stop? Don't put on the computer. Don't put on our phones. Just don't do anything. How many of us were able to do that? And enjoy that feeling? Because trust me, once you get to a point of contentment, then you ain't gonna need religion. End of story.
Yeah, Michelle is closing it off on a very big point there. But we've come to a close. We've come to a close. Thank you all so much. Thank you. You know, we had a very active audience in terms of the comments. We need to please close us out.
Wow. Again, a very insightful conversation, very stimulating conversation. I'm not guilty.
Watch yourself there.
I like the audience members, the viewers' participation, the questions, the comments were very on point, you know. But like I said, Anton, when you said you have to get to that point, when I get home, I give them Monday to Friday. After 4 o'clock Friday, it's about me. I do what I want. If I don't want anything, I don't do it. So from Friday, from 4 o'clock, it's about me. And I try to get people to be like that, because if there's no you, if you are not good, if you're not whole, if you're not well, if you are at dis-ease, then how could you even function? You know, how could you even function? How could you help others? So as you mentioned, we got to work. Yeah, but I've for years now, Jill will tell you, I'm not going anywhere if I don't want to. I'm at the stage where I do what I want to do. A lot of people don't like that I term, but I realized before I got to that stage, it was always about everybody else. Like you said, trying to please this. Not anymore. I couldn't do it. And I realized I can't save the world. I can't save the world. So I had to bring it back to about me. Because if I am not good, if I'm not at ease, then how could I put others at ease? So that's where I am. So I'd like to thank Antoine. Like you said, we brought you with mental health, but we're going to bring you for every other thing. Because you seem like you could multitask. You're multifaceted. So Compton, thank you. Dr. Loire, thank you. Jillian, I know you put aside because you're a sole proprietor, you put aside your time to come and join us. We thank you very much. All of the viewers and the audience and the people with the comments, taking time out to stay with us throughout the time that we were trending and participating. We thank you. All of your comments were on point, like I said. Some of them give me food for thought points to ponder, and we thank you. So please continue to join us on Fridays, where our topics, we try to come up with topics that will have your mind trending also, and stimulate the cortexes in our brain so that we can share and encourage and uplift each other. Thank you, guys. Have a great weekend and stay safe. Good night.
Thank you.
Good night.
Good night. Good night.
What is knowledge? And how much of it must we acquire in order to better our lives? What makes some forms of knowledge seemingly more advantageous than others? What fuels this desire to learn and to know and to understand? And how much of what we learn is actually applied to the bettering of our lives? Is it necessary to know in order to grow? Join us, a group of former Guyanese high schoolers and our special guests, as we chat about the things we need to know and about education and the process of learning in the tech age. This is The Trending Mind, Friday evenings at 7:30 Eastern Standard Time.